I need to talk about this game called Pickmon that just got announced, because it raises some genuinely interesting questions about where the line is between inspiration and straight-up copying. And I'm going to be pretty blunt here. I don't think this is inspiration. I think this is a copy. Like, not even a well-disguised one. A pretty blatant copy of Pokémon, Zelda and Palworld all mashed together. Let me walk you through what I saw in the trailer and why I think this crosses the line from taking inspiration to just outright ripping things off. Because there's a conversation to be had here about what's acceptable in game development and what isn't. And Pickmon seems determined to test exactly where that boundary is. So first off, the game is called Pickmon. Not even trying to hide it. The protagonist looks like Link. Like straight up Link from Zelda. The companion creature is this yellow electric type thing that is so obviously meant to evoke Pikachu that it's almost insulting. And then you've got these creatures running around with guns, which is the Palworld angle. It's like they looked at 3 of the most recognizable gaming properties out there and decided to just combine them without putting in any effort to make it feel original. And here's the thing, taking inspiration from successful games is fine. It's how the medium evolves. You see something that works, you understand why it works, you incorporate those lessons into your own project while bringing your own ideas to the table. That's normal, that's expected. But what Pickmon is doing doesn't feel like that to me. It feels like they just took existing designs and changed them just enough to try to avoid getting sued. The Pickmon themselves are the most egregious example of this. They're literally Pokémon with slight visual alterations. I saw what looked like Charizard in the trailer, just with a different face. The yellow electric one is Pikachu with a slightly different design. The capture mechanic uses cards instead of Pokeballs, but functionally it's the same thing. You throw the card at the creature, it gets absorbed into the card, now you own it. It's the Pokémon formula with the most superficial changes possible, and that's where I have a problem with it. Because this isn't taking the concept of creature collection and doing something new with it. This is taking Pokémon's specific visual language, their specific creature designs, their specific capture mechanics, and just tweaking them slightly. That's not inspiration. That's copying and hoping you changed enough details to get away with it. Now let's talk about the bigger question here. Where is the line between inspiration and copying? Because this is something the gaming industry struggles with constantly. You've got entire genres that exist because one game did something well and everyone else copied it. Battle Royales exist because PUBG and Fortnite popularized the format. Souls-likes exist because Dark Souls created a template that worked. Vampire Survivors spawned an entire subgenre of horde survival games. But here's the distinction. When you're inspired by a game, you take the mechanical concepts and apply them in your own way with your own aesthetic and your own ideas. When you're copying, you're taking the specific implementation, the specific visual design, the specific identity of that game and just changing it slightly. Palworld is actually a good example of walking that line. It took Pokémon's creature collection concept, combined it with survival crafting mechanics, added guns for shock value, and created something that felt distinct even though the inspiration was obvious. The Pals look like they could exist in the Pokémon universe, sure, but they're not just slightly altered versions of existing Pokémon. They're their own designs that evoke the same general aesthetic without directly copying specific creatures. Pickmon doesn't do that. Pickmon looks at Pikachu and creates a yellow electric rodent that's almost identical, looks at Charizard and creates a fire dragon that's almost identical. That's not inspiration, that's hoping you change just enough to avoid legal action. And speaking of legal action, I genuinely don't think this game is going to release, at least not in its current form. Nintendo is notoriously protective of their IP, and while they've let some things slide, this seems like exactly the kind of thing they'd come down hard on. The visual similarities are too obvious, the name is too close, the mechanics are too directly lifted. I would be genuinely shocked if Nintendo's legal team hasn't already reached out or isn't planning to very soon. There's a reason Palworld survived despite the controversy. The developers were careful about how they implemented things. The creatures were inspired by Pokémon but weren't direct copies. The mechanics were familiar but not identical. They walked the line carefully enough that Nintendo couldn't or didn't want to pursue legal action. Pickmon doesn't seem to have that same level of care. It feels reckless. Like they either don't understand how protective Nintendo is of their IP, or they just don't care. And I can't figure out which scenario is more likely. Either way, I'd be very surprised if this makes it to market without significant changes or getting shut down entirely. But let's assume for a second that somehow this game does release, that Nintendo doesn't sue them into oblivion and the game actually comes out. My question then becomes, why would I play this instead of Palworld? What does Pickmon offer that Palworld doesn't already do better? From what I've seen, Pickmon is an open-world survival crafting game where you collect creatures and use them for various tasks. Building, farming, combat, automation. That's Palworld. That's literally what Palworld already is. So unless Pickmon has some unique hook that makes it meaningfully different, I don't see the point. And I don't think it looks more like Pokémon is a strong enough hook. Because if I want Pokémon, I'll play Pokémon. If I want the edgy creature collection with guns and survival mechanics, I'll play Palworld, which already exists and is polished and supported. Pickmon feels like it's trying to exist in this middle ground that doesn't need to exist, because both ends of the spectrum are already covered. This gets back to the core issue with copying instead of innovating. When you're just combining existing successful elements without bringing anything new to the table, you're creating something that's inherently less interesting than the things you're copying from. You're creating a worse version of something that already exists. If Pickmon had taken the creature collection concept and done something genuinely new with it, if it had a unique art style that wasn't just Pokémon but slightly different, if it had mechanics that distinguished it from both Pokémon and Palworld, then maybe there'd be a reason for it to exist. But from everything I've seen, it's just a mashup of existing successful games with the most minimal changes possible. And look, I understand the appeal of trying to create something in a popular genre. Pokémon is one of the biggest franchises in the world. Palworld proved there's an audience for edgier takes on the formula. The market is there. But the way to tap into that market isn't to just copy what already exists and hope nobody notices or cares. The way to do it is what Palworld did. Take the core concept, understand what makes it work, and then build something that feels like its own thing even while acknowledging its influences. Palworld succeeded because it had an identity beyond Pokémon with guns. It had survival mechanics, base building, automation systems, a distinct art style that wasn't just Pokémon designs with minor alterations. Pickmon, from what I can tell, doesn't have that. It's Pokémon designs with minor alterations, Zelda's protagonist, Palworld's guns and survival mechanics, all mashed together without a clear identity of its own. And that's the fundamental problem. There's this tendency sometimes to root for the underdog, to support smaller developers taking on big corporations, and I get that impulse. But that only works when the smaller developer is actually bringing something new to the table. When they're innovating or taking risks, or doing something the big corporation won't or can't do. Pickmon isn't doing any of that, it's just copying and hoping that's enough. I'll be genuinely surprised if it makes it to release without either massive changes, or legal action shutting it down entirely. But even if it does somehow release, I still don't see a reason to play it when Pokémon and Palworld both exist and do what Pickmon is trying to do, but better and with their own distinct identities. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think about this game in the comments and see you in the next one.